1963. A bedroom in Memphis, and the furnace clicks on through the floor grate. Linoleum cold under bare feet. A woman is moving before the house wakes. Every hour governed by rules she did not invent but inherited. Those rules were buried so industries could sell replacements for what was already free. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly what those rules were and why no one told you. Black women in mid-century America did not have simpler lives. They had structured ones. This video opens with a deep look at vanished morning wake-up rituals every 1960s Black woman completed before anyone else was awake. That section comes first because it changes everything that follows. After that, vanished Sunday fashion rules every 1960s Black woman had to follow. Then the centerpiece. The one that changed more of you than any video on this channel. Vanished Afro-American beauty tricks from the 1960s that still work today. That video proved what the beauty industry never wanted proven. That beauty was never purchased. It was practiced. And millions of you watched it and remembered what your mothers already knew. After that, vanished hair rules every Black church lady knew. The unspoken hygiene rules every 1950s Black woman knew, and 20 tricks Black grandmothers used to feed 20 people on almost nothing. Everyone was free. Not one required a product you had to buy. In Black households of the 1950s and 60s, the first hour belonged to the woman of the house. Before children woke, before coffee, cold water face wash, scalp oiling with Dixie Peach, skin greased at elbows, knees, and heels with petroleum jelly. Clothes pressed the night before. A 1962 study in the Journal of Home Economics found over 70% of Black women completed a grooming routine before 5:30 in the morning. The beauty industry had no use for a woman who needed nothing. When marketing reached Black consumers, the message shifted from maintain to fix. That was not a failure of memory. That was a business decision. And the morning ritual was only the outermost layer of a system that governed every hour until the lights went out. A vanity table with a small mirror and a jar of Pond's cold cream. A kitchen where the cast iron skillet is already warm at 5:15 in the morning. A pressed cotton slip hanging on the back of a bedroom door in Harlem, the smell of Dixie Peach warming on a hot comb, the sound of starch popping under a General Electric iron at 6 in the morning, the quiet snap of a pocketbook clasp before she walked out the front door. A house that smelled like order. These women moved through their days inside a structure that modern life has completely abandoned, not because it failed, because it could not be sold. Here is what they never told you. Every practice you are about to see was free. Every one of them worked. And everyone was quietly removed from American households so that something more expensive could take its place. What follows is not a collection of tips. It is a discipline. A complete system of daily living that once governed every hour from sunrise to bedtime in Black homes across America. Number 15. The Saturday night press and curl. Every Sunday outfit began Saturday night, not Sunday morning. The pressing comb on the stove was the starting gun for the entire ritual. Like millions of other little Black girls in the 60s with curly or coarse hair, Saturday was the appointed time to have your hair done. Many Black women supplemented their income by doing hair in kitchens and basements across the neighborhood. She wrapped a towel around your shoulders. She bent your head over the kitchen sink. She washed your hair with Prel shampoo or sometimes Joy dishwashing liquid. Then came the comb. Madam C.J. Walker had redesigned the hot comb back in the early 1900s with wider teeth that worked on Black hair. Royal Crown hair grease on the counter, the smoke rising from the teeth of the comb, the hiss when hot metal met oiled hair. No girl who ever had her hair straightened escaped without at least one burn. The tip of an ear, a small mark on the forehead. You flinched, and your mother told you to hold still, and you did. The pressing comb was not about beauty standards. It was about a mother's hands telling a daughter that tomorrow mattered. You reached a certain age, and then you got your hair straightened for the first time. Not for school, for Easter, for big days at church. It was a rite of passage. But the press and curl was just the beginning. Because underneath whatever dress was hanging on the bedroom door, there was a rule most people today have never even heard of. Number 14. The mandatory slip underneath everything. No dress went on without a full slip underneath. Half slips for skirts, full slips for dresses. This was not optional. Nylon or rayon, usually white or beige, with lace trim at the hem and the bodice. You could buy one at Sears or J.C. Penney for under $2. The slip prevented the dress from clinging. It stopped the fabric from showing a silhouette in backlight. It kept the outline of your legs invisible when sunlight came through that church window. Mothers checked, grandmothers double-checked. If the light came through and revealed anything, you were sent back to fix it before anyone left the house. The slip was modesty made tangible, the invisible layer between the body and the world. What you kept hidden was as important as what you chose to show, and what covered the legs below that slip had its own rule, one that did not bend for weather or common sense. Number 13. Stockings in July. No bare legs, ever. Bare legs in church did not exist. Not in January, not in August. Nylon stockings. Period. Church, brunch, dinner parties, outings to the city. All of it required sheer stockings no matter how hot and humid the day turned. Most were fully fashioned, knit flat and shaped to the leg rather than as a stretchy tube. They were held up by garter belts or girdles. Hanes and Cannon Mills were the standard brands. Seams ran up the back and they had to be straight. Crooked seams were noticed. A run in your stocking on the way to church was a genuine emergency. Clear nail polish on the snag, right there in the car. A spare pair in the purse, always. A woman's legs covered in sheer nylon in 100-degree heat was not comfort. It was conviction. The stockings said one thing: I did not come here casually. I came here prepared. Number 12. The girdle beneath the dress. A foundation garment worn under the dress to hold the silhouette smooth and the stockings up. Playtex. Maiden form. Form fit. You stepped into it, pulled it up, and snapped the garter clips to your stockings, the elastic bit into the waist. You could not slouch. You could not slump in the pew. The girdle held you upright whether you wanted to be held or not. A flexible, lightweight corset made from elastic, designed to shape the figure around the hips and hold everything in place. The girdle was discipline you wore against your skin. It was uncomfortable and nobody pretended otherwise, but a woman who stood straight in a pew for 2 hours without fidgeting, that was the girdle doing its work. Posture was a form of prayer. Number 11. Shoes and handbag. Matched or do not bother. Your shoes and your handbag had to match. Same color, same material if possible. Patent leather to patent leather. This was law. Patent leather pumps from Tom McCann or Kinney shoes. $2 to $4 a pair. The handbag was a structured clutch or a small frame bag with a clasp that clicked shut. Navy shoes with a navy bag. White shoes with a white bag. Black shoes with a black bag. And white shoes only between Easter and Labor Day. Wearing white after September carried its own judgment. Nobody had to say a word. Everybody already knew. The matching was not about fashion magazines. It was about a woman telling every eye in that church one thing. I thought about this. I planned this. Nothing on my body is accidental. 5 rules in. Notice what they share. Not one of them was about looking pretty. Every rule was about preparation, discipline, and the declaration that Sunday morning was not casual. For most of these women, the other 6 days of the week meant work, domestic labor, factory floors, kitchens that belonged to other people. Sunday worship was the one morning when a black woman was in full control of how she presented herself to the world. 6 days a week, the world told these women who they were. On Sunday, they told the world. Number 10. The white gloves, white cotton or nylon gloves, wrist length for regular Sundays, elbow length for Easter and special occasions. Children wore white cotton gloves to church every Sunday in the 60s. The practice faded by around 1970. To clean them, mothers had children stand on stools at the kitchen sink, put the gloves on their hands, get them wet, and pour Woolite over them. You washed them as though you were washing your hands. The gloves dried on a towel overnight. They were pulled on last, right before walking out the front door. They stayed on through the entire service. You held your hymnal with gloved hands. You dropped your offering envelope into the plate with gloved fingers. You shook the pastor's hand at the door on the way out with a gloved palm. The gloves said your hands were clean. Your intentions were clean. You came into that sanctuary without the dirt of the week still on you. Number 9. No pants. Ever. Not once. Women wore dresses or skirt suits to church. Pants were not discouraged. They were forbidden. In 1971, a woman named Deborah Liedman wore pants to church and sparked a genuine debate. Before that moment, a woman arriving in slacks would have been met at the door, not with anger, with confusion, as if she had misread the calendar entirely. The A-line dress, the sheath dress, the 2-piece skirt suit with the buttons running clean down the front. These were the silhouettes of Sunday. The hemline hit below the knee, always. The dress was not about femininity. It was about formality. You did not wear to God's house what you wore to the grocery store. The separation was the point. Number 8. The brooch on the lapel. A costume jewelry brooch pinned to the left lapel of the suit jacket or at the neckline of the dress. Sometimes rhinestone, sometimes pearl cluster, sometimes gold-toned filigree. Trifari, Sarah Coventry, Monet. These were the brands in every jewelry box on every dresser. A good brooch cost between $1 and $3. Mothers had favorites. Some wore the same one every Sunday for decades. A cameo brooch on a cream suit. A pearl cluster on navy wool. The pin left a tiny hole in the fabric over time, right at the lapel. When the dress finally wore out, the brooch kept going. Daughters inherited them. Granddaughters wore them on their wedding day. The brooch was the one piece you chose for yourself. Everything else had rules. The brooch was your signature, the small, quiet place where obedience met personality. Number 7. The handkerchief, never a tissue. A pressed, folded handkerchief carried in the purse or tucked into the left glove at the wrist. Lace-edged or embroidered with initials. Cotton or linen. Some were plain white with a crocheted border made by hand. Some had tiny flowers embroidered in the corner. You could buy them in sets of 3 from the Sears Roebuck catalog for less than $1. The handkerchief came out when the Spirit moved, when the sermon hit something deep. When the choir sang a hymn that pulled tears from a place you thought was empty. You pressed it to the corner of your eye. You folded it. You put it back. A tissue would have crumpled and disappeared. The handkerchief held its shape, just like the woman holding it. Number 6. The church fan in the purse. A flat cardboard fan on a wooden stick, usually from the local funeral home, carried inside the purse and brought out during service. One side had a picture. Jesus in the garden, Martin Luther King Jr. a family at prayer. The other side had the funeral home's name, address, and phone number. They were given free at church doors and funeral parlors across the South. Women fanned themselves in the pews with a slow, steady rhythm that kept time with the sermon. The sound of 200 fans moving at once in a church with no air conditioning was like wind through paper leaves. The fan was the most honest object in the building. It admitted what the stockings and the girdle would never say out loud. It was hot. This was hard, and she was staying anyway. 10 rules deep. And here is what the list is really saying. These women built a system of presentation so complete, so deliberate, that every detail from scalp to sole carried meaning. Putting on the finest attire was how you affirmed your worth in a world that sought to deny it. The modern world calls this vanity. The women who lived it called it survival. Number 5. The offering envelope prepared the night before. A small white envelope sealed and placed in the purse Saturday night. You did not fumble with cash in the pew. The envelope had the church name printed on it. Some had a line for your name and the amount. The money went in Saturday evening. The flap was licked shut. It sat in the center compartment of the handbag until the offering plate came around. A brass or woven basket lined with velvet. You placed the envelope face down, quietly, with your gloved hand. You did not count bills in your lap. You did not dig through your wallet. You did not make change. Generosity was prepared in advance and delivered without a sound. The sealed envelope said something simple. What I give is between me and God, not between me and the woman sitting next to me. Number 4. The children matched the mother. Daughters wore coordinated outfits that echoed the mother's color scheme. Sons wore miniature suits. The family walked into church as a unit. Generations of black families passed down this practice. Lay the clothes out Saturday night. Polish the shoes. Wrap the hair. A girl in a pink organdy dress with white ankle socks and black patent leather Mary Janes, walking beside a mother in a pink linen suit with white gloves and a matching hat. A boy in a clip-on bow tie and pressed slacks with a crease sharp enough to cut paper. Children learning how to sit still in ruffles and lace socks. The family photograph taken in the vestibule after service. Everybody matched. Everybody pressed. Everybody still. The matching was not decoration. It was a mother saying something without opening her mouth. We belong to each other, and we came here together. Number 3. The perfume applied at the wrists and behind the ears. A dab of fragrance at the pulse points, wrists, behind the ears, base of the throat, applied as the very last step before leaving the house. Avon was the brand of the neighborhood. The favorites were Sweet Honesty, Occur, and Here's My Heart. Evening in Paris came in that cobalt blue bottle and cost about $1.50 from the Avon lady who walked the block on Wednesdays. The dab was small. One touch of the glass stopper to each wrist, a press of the wrists together, then behind each ear. You walked into church trailing a scent that arrived 2 steps before you did. It lingered in the pew 3 minutes after you stood up and left. The perfume was the last invisible layer. You could not see it. You could not prove it was there, but everyone who sat near that woman knew. She had finished. Every layer, every detail, every rule completed, down to the last invisible thing. Number 2. The hat, the crown. In black communities, the church hat was never just an accessory. It was called a crown, and it was treated like one. May Reeves acquired a $500 loan from the black-owned Citizens and Southern Bank and opened May's Millinery Shop in Philadelphia. Her shop sat along the famed South Street, and she became one of the first black women to own a business in the city's commercial hub. Ella Fitzgerald walked in. Eartha Kitt walked in. Marian Anderson and Lena Horne walked in. They all wore her hats. The hat was chosen first. The entire outfit was built around it. An old guideline held that the brim should never be wider than the wearer's shoulders. The hat should be the focal point, but must not compete with the jewelry or the dress. You never touched another woman's hat without permission. But the most treasured pieces were always passed down, mother to daughter to granddaughter. The hat symbolized triumph over hardship. When you see older women who still wear hats to church on Sunday, it is a reminder of how that generation asserted dignity when the world offered them none. A woman chose her crown. She placed it on her own head, and she walked into a room full of people and dared the world to look away. But none of these rules meant anything without the last one, the one that was not a garment at all. Number 1. The inspection at the front door. Before the family left the house, the mother or the grandmother stood at the front door and looked every person over, head to toe. No one walked out until she was satisfied. She checked the seams on the stockings, the crease in the trousers, the lint on the shoulder, the hat angle, the glove fit. She looked for the slip showing or not showing, the shoes polished or not polished. She turned the children around slowly. She sent one back upstairs for a different tie. She licked her thumb and pressed down a flyaway edge of hair near the temple. She said nothing when everything was right. She just opened the door. That inspection was not about perfection. It was about a woman who knew exactly what the world thought of her family the moment they stepped outside. She could not control what waited on the other side of that door, but she could control what walked through it. And every Sunday morning she did. 15 rules. Not one required a credit card or a social media account. Just starch, a hot comb, a steady hand. Those women did not dress up because the world told them they were beautiful. They dressed up because the world told them they were not. And they answered. Every Sunday. In hats and gloves and heels, clicking across tile floors like punctuation at the end of a sentence, nobody wanted them to finish. But Sunday was only one day of the week. The discipline behind that wardrobe had been shaping how she looked the other 6, and the beauty practices behind it were even older. Number 20. Castor oil for edges and temples. Women applied cold-pressed castor oil nightly to the hairline, the temples, and the nape. There was a glass bottle of Palma Christi castor oil, thick as honey, pale gold, 20 cents at the colored pharmacy. They dipped the ring finger and rubbed in small circles at the temples where the hair was thinnest. The edges filled in by Easter without anyone being told to be patient. Jamaican black castor oil is now a market segment worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Young women on social media film themselves applying it to their edges as though they discovered fire. Their great-grandmothers were doing this by lamplight in 1940. Nobody filmed it. It just worked. Number 19. The satin headscarf night wrap. Every night before bed. Non-negotiable. Black women wrap their hair in a satin or silk scarf. The style held, the moisture stayed, and the edges were protected from a cotton pillowcase that would have stolen every bit of oil by morning. A square of satin from the fabric counter at Woolworth's, 15 cents a yard. The scarf was folded into a triangle, tied at the front or knotted at the nape. That press could hold 5, 6, 7 days straight because the fabric never pulled against the curl. Instagram now sells luxury silk bonnets for $45. The function is identical to a piece of satin from a fabric scrap bin in 1961. The knowledge was never lost. It just got expensive. Number 18. Flaxseed gel boiled on the stove. Women boiled whole flax seeds in water until a thick, clear gel formed. They strained it and used it as setting gel for edges, twists, and pin curls. 2 tablespoons of whole flax seeds, 10 cents from the health food shelf, boiled in a cup of water, stirred slowly. When the spoon dragged and the liquid turned to ribbons, it was done. Strained through an old stocking into a mason jar. Clear as egg white. No flaking, no crunch. No white residue drying in the part line. The natural hair community popularized this around 2012 and treated it as a revelation. Brands now sell flaxseed gel for $12 to $18 a jar. The recipe has not changed. Number 17. Blue Magic Hair Grease. Daily application of petroleum and oil-based hair dressing to the scalp and hair for moisture retention and sheen. Blue Magic in the cobalt blue plastic jar, 49 cents. Royal Crown in the small glass tub with the gold lid. A fingertip's worth rubbed between the palms until warm, then smoothed from root to end. The faint grease stain on the doily where her head rested on the couch. The sheen under the sanctuary lights on Sunday morning. The natural hair movement declared grease bad for hair around 2010. Then, in 2022, the greasing method returned on social media. Young women filming themselves applying it to the scalp the exact same way their mothers did. Nobody gave those mothers credit. They did not need credit. They needed their daughters to come home and sit down. Number 16. Witch Hazel and Rosewater Toner. Women applied witch hazel as an astringent after washing their face, sometimes mixed with rosewater for softness. Dickinson's witch hazel came in the tall glass bottle. It cost 35 cents. A cotton ball was saturated and pressed across the forehead, down the nose, along the chin. Some women added a splash of rosewater from the drugstore, the kind that smelled like a grandmother's handkerchief drawer. Just 2 liquids and a cotton ball on a Saturday night. The skincare industry now sells toners for $8 to $30 a bottle. Many list witch hazel as their first active ingredient. Nobody invented it. Somebody just repackaged it. 5 items deep, and every one of them came from the same place. The kitchen, the bathroom shelf, the dresser drawer. These women did not separate beauty from daily life. There was no wall between the pantry and the vanity. That wall was built later by people who needed you to believe your grandmother's methods were not enough. They were always enough. Number 15. Sulfur-8. Scalp treatment. Women applied sulfur-8 medicated hair and scalp conditioner directly to the scalp to treat dandruff and itching and to stimulate growth. The round yellow and red tin, 60 cents. The unmistakable sulfur smell that announced itself across the room. They parted the hair section by section and rubbed the product into the scalp in small circles. The slight burning tingle meant it was reaching the root. By morning, the scalp was clear and flake-free. Modern scalp serums sell for $35 and list sulfur compounds as their breakthrough active ingredient. Sulfur-8 was on the shelf by the late 1940s. It cost pocket change. Number 14. Palmer's Cocoa Butter Stick. The formula was applied to stretch marks, dry patches, elbows, knees, and heels. It was the brown and gold twist-up stick. It cost 45 cents. It was dragged across the kneecaps after a bath. It was rubbed into the belly during pregnancy. The chocolate smell lingered in the bathroom steam. Heels went from cracked and ashy to smooth as river stone in 2 weeks flat. The formula has barely changed since the 1950s. Women who used it daily swore their stretch marks stayed lighter and thinner. They did not call it preventative care. They called it getting dressed. Number 13. Hot oil treatment heated on the stove, a 1/4 cup of olive oil in a saucepan, the same oil used for cornbread. Heated until warm to the wrist, never hot. Poured into a parted section, rubbed in with the fingers. A towel soaked in hot water, wrung tight, wrapped around the whole head like a turban. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. By the time she shampooed, the hair moved like it remembered what softness was. The salon hot oil treatment now costs $25 to $40 per session. It is olive oil, heated and applied to the hair. Nothing has changed except who gets to charge for it. Number 12. Cornrows under a wig for growth. Women braided their natural hair into flat cornrows, then covered the braids with a wig or hairpiece and left them in for weeks. The hair underneath grew in silence, with no manipulation, no breakage, and no daily combing, pulling, heat, or damage. Protective styling is now an entire content category on the internet, with millions of videos and millions of products. The principle was invented by women who simply could not afford to damage what they had. Necessity built the method, and marketing gave it a name 50 years later. Number 11. African black soap, a rough brown black block from the African market. Made from plantain ash, cocoa pod ash, and shea butter, crumbled between wet hands into a soft lather. It smelled like the earth. It stung on open blemishes, which meant it was reaching. Used as face wash, body soap, and sometimes shampoo. One block lasted 3 months in a household of 4. African black soap is now sold at Target for $8 to $14 in a branded bottle. The raw block still costs $2 at the African market on 125th Street in Harlem. The recipe is 1,000 years old. The markup is brand new. There is something the beauty industry does not want you to notice. Every breakthrough ingredient of the last 20 years was already sitting on a shelf in a black woman's bathroom in 1962. She did not read about it in a magazine. She learned it from her mother, who learned it from hers, who brought the knowledge across the water from somewhere the industry never thought to look. They did not discover these ingredients. They excavated them from someone else's cabinet and put them in a prettier jar. Number 10. The stocking cap wave and mold. A woman's sheer nylon stocking. The leg cut off at the thigh, stretched over the head, and knotted at the crown. The nylon pressing the hair flat against the skull all night. Men chasing 360 waves with Murray's pomade and a stocking cap for months. Brushing, wrapping, revealing, brushing again. The discipline of it. The durag replaced it. Then the durag became a fashion statement, then a political statement, then a runway piece at Fashion Week. But it started as a cut-off stocking in a bedroom drawer. It started as function. Everything else came after. Number 9. Black tea rinse for shedding. 4 bags of Lipton tea in a saucepan, boiled dark to the color of mahogany. Cooled to room temperature, then poured slowly over the hair at the kitchen sink. Not rinsed out. Left in. The tannins acted as an astringent on the hair shaft, reducing shedding. Hair stopped falling out within 2 weeks of regular use. A box of Lipton cost less than 50 cents. Hair loss products now cost $40 a month and contain the same tannins in synthetic form. The kettle was faster and never asked for a monthly subscription. Number 8. Queen Helene. Cholesterol. Deep conditioner. The tall white jar with the green lid. 89 cents for a full pound. Thick as spackle, scooped out with 2 fingers and worked through section by section. A plastic grocery bag tied over the hair. 30 minutes under a warm towel. The slip when she rinsed, fingers sliding through without a single snag for the first time in weeks. Professional deep conditioning treatments now cost $20 to $60 per session. Queen Helene cholesterol is still on the shelf, still under $5. Some things do not need reinventing, they need remembering. Number 7. Dixie Peach Pomade. The flat, round tin with the peach on the label, 35 cents. Dense and golden like warm caramel. The peach sweet petroleum smell that hung in the kitchen air when the pressing comb was heating. A fingertip's worth smoothed through freshly pressed hair. The way the light hit it under the sanctuary ceiling on Sunday morning. Dixie Peach was not a luxury. It was a household staple, the way bread was a household staple. Every black child in America between 1940 and 1975 knew that smell with their eyes closed. You could walk into a strange kitchen in a strange city, and if you smelled Dixie Peach, you knew you were home. Number 6. The Vaseline Barrier Method. Vaseline Petroleum. Jelly applied to the lips, elbows, heels, and knees. Smoothed around the hairline before pressing as a heat protectant. The small blue cap jar. 9 cents in 1960. A thumbnail scrape rubbed across the lips before bed. A thick layer on the heels before pulling on socks. A heat shield that kept the skin from burning. The slight shine on the cheekbones of women who used a dab as highlighter before highlighter existed as a category. Vaseline was not one product. It was 20 products in a single jar. The beauty industry later separated each function into its own bottle with its own price tag. The jar did not change. The marketing did. Nearly every practice on this list requires something the modern beauty industry cannot sell. Time. Stillness. Hands. A daughter sitting on the floor between her mother's knees, getting her hair oiled section by section. These rituals were not efficient. They were not designed to be. They were the architecture of closeness, built into the routine so that love had somewhere to live every single week. No product replaces that. No subscription box contains it. Number 5. Pond's Cold Cream Nightly Ritual. The heavy white jar with the green lid on the nightstand, scooped with 2 fingers and massaged in slow circles. Forehead, cheeks, chin, down the neck. A soft washcloth wiped it away. The skin left dewy and clean without a drop of water touching the face. Oil cleansing is now a $30 to $60 step in a multi-step skincare routine. The principle is the same as cold cream. Dissolve oil with oil, wipe it away. Pond's is still $3 at the drugstore. Number 4. The Marcel iron from the stove burner. A heavy metal curling iron with no cord and no plug, laid across the blue gas flame until hot. It was tested on a scrap of brown paper bag. If it scorched the paper dark, it was too hot. Wait. Test again. When the paper turned faint gold, the temperature was right. The iron clamped around a section of pressed hair and rolled, one slow, continuous turn, steam rising from the oil on the strand. A perfect curl fell, heavy and glossy, onto the shoulder. A $300 curling wand with ceramic plates and digital temperature control is doing what a $4 iron and a piece of paper bag did in 1958. The paper bag was the temperature gauge. The woman's wrist was the timer. No technology was needed because the skill was the technology. Number 3. Pin curls set at night. DeLong bobby pins from the 5 and dime, 10 cents a card. Hair dampened with a spray bottle or sugar water setting lotion. Each section wound tight around the index and middle fingers, coiled flat against the scalp and crossed with 2 pins. With practice, the whole head can be finished in 10 minutes. A satin scarf tied over the top. In the morning, each pin is removed one by one. The clink of metal dropping into the glass dish on the vanity. Curls springing open, full and defined. Lasting 3 to 4 days without heat, without damage, without a single split end. No electricity required. Just a woman's fingers, 10 cents worth of pins, and the discipline to do it every single night. Miss Geneva's kitchen on a Saturday morning. 3 folding chairs in the front room, women waiting with their daughters. 2 pressing combs heating at once. The price, handwritten on a card taped to the refrigerator. Press and curl, $2. Children, $1.50. A radio playing gospel low in the window. The kitchen beautician was more than a hairdresser. She was a banker who took payment in installments. A therapist who listened while she pressed and never repeated what she heard. She built an economy with a comb, a stove, and her 2 hands. No cosmetology board could credential what she already was. No franchise could replicate what she offered, because what she offered was not a service. It was a place to belong. Number 1. The Saturday morning hot comb press. The pressing comb was heavy brass with a wooden handle and teeth close together. It was laid across the front burner on a low blue flame. The smell of Posner's bergamot pressing oil warmed the air. A mother's hand tested the heat on a white paper towel, looking for the faint gold mark that meant the temperature was right. A daughter sat on a kitchen chair between her mother's knees. The comb was drawn slowly from root to tip, the soft sizzle of oil meeting heat, steam rising from the strand like morning fog. The ear was folded down gently with a fingertip as the comb passed the temple. The nape of the neck, the kitchen, they called it. The hardest part. The part that mattered most. 1 section at a time. The whole head took 45 minutes or an hour, depending on thickness. And when it was done, the hair swung free, straight and shining. The relief of it being over and the pride of how it looked, both feelings at once. Every black woman over 55 remembers the press. The heat near the ear, the hand on the forehead holding the skin taut. The trust required to sit perfectly still while fire passed an inch from the skin. It was not just a hairstyle. It was an act of faith between mother and daughter, repeated every Saturday morning for the better part of a century. The flat iron did not replace it. Nothing replaced it, because it was never only about the hair. It was about the hands, and whose hands held the comb, and the fact that she never once burned you. 20 practices. Every one born in a kitchen, a bathroom, or a bedroom with the door closed. No influencer, no algorithm, no subscription box delivered to the porch. Just a woman with steady hands and the knowledge her mother left behind. Somewhere right now, a daughter sits between her grandmother's knees. The comb is heating on the burner. The oil is warming on the back of her neck. Without a single word spoken, everything worth knowing is being passed down again. Every one of those tricks proved something the modern beauty industry cannot afford for you to hear. Beauty was never purchased. It was practiced, and practicing it meant knowing the rules that started at the church door. Number 15. The pressing comb on the stove burner. Every black household with a woman in it owned a pressing comb. It was heated directly on the stove burner and drawn through sectioned hair to straighten it. No cord, no plug, no temperature dial. A steel pressing comb, any brand, Kizur, or an unmarked one passed down from an aunt. It was laid across the gas burner until the teeth glowed faintly orange. Tested on a piece of brown paper bag. If the paper turned golden brown, the heat was right. If it scorched black, it was too hot. Wait 30 seconds, then test again. The sound was a soft crackling hiss as hot metal met oiled hair. The smell was bergamot, petroleum, and singed protein. The comb cost $1.50 at the 5 and dime. It lasted 20 years. The temperature gauge was a mother's wrist. That pressing comb was not a beauty tool. It was an instrument, and the woman who held it was the musician. Number 14. The Saturday night wash and press. Saturday night was hair night. The entire process could take 2 to 4 hours. Wash, dry, oil, press, curl. It was non-negotiable. Sunday morning was not the time to be unprepared. Hair washed at the kitchen sink. They used Prel shampoo or Castile soap, 50 to 60 cents. Towel dried, then sectioned with duckbill clips. The process had an order that never changed. Back sections first, crown last. The mother stood, the daughter sat. The television might be on in the other room. You faced the stove and you kept your head still. That kitchen became a salon every Saturday at 6 o'clock. No appointment, no small talk with a stranger, just the sound of your mother's voice telling you to hold still. Number 13. The scalp grease. Women greased their scalps nightly, or at minimum before every press. The grease protected the hair from heat, sealed in moisture, and fed the scalp. 3 purposes. 1 jar. Royal Crown hair dressing in the red and gold tin. 25 cents in 1955. Blue Magic in the blue jar. Dax in the dark green tin. A wide-tooth comb parted the hair into rows. A fingertip's worth of grease pressed directly onto the exposed scalp along each part line, then smoothed root to end. You knew a woman by her grease the way you knew her by her perfume. The beauty industry now sells scalp oils for $38 an ounce. They call it a breakthrough. Your grandmother called it Tuesday night before bed. Number 12. The kitchen. The kitchen was not a room. In every black household, it meant one thing: the tight, coiled hair at the nape of the neck, the hardest spot to press. The tenderest skin on a child's body. The mother's left hand pulling the ear forward, holding it flat against the side of the head. A smaller pressing comb drawn through the short hair at the base of the skull. The heat near the ear. The breath held. The involuntary flinch when metal got too close. Hold still. Said once. Said quiet. Said like a warning. If the kitchen was straight, you passed inspection. If it was not, the whole head might as well have been untouched. Every woman who sat in that chair remembers the kitchen, not the room, the spot. Number 11. Pressing oil and the green bottles. Before any heat touched the hair, pressing oil was applied section by section. It lubricated the strand, prevented scorching, and gave the finished press its signature sheen. Bergamot pressing oil came in a narrow green glass bottle. It cost 15 cents at the colored drugstore in 1952. A dropper dispensed 2 or 3 drops per section. The smell was citrus and petroleum, heavy and warm. Later, brands such as Ultra Sheen or Posner's Bergamot appeared. Some women used plain Vaseline if money was tight. The oil sizzled faintly when the hot comb made contact. That sizzle was the sound of Saturday night in a black kitchen from Harlem to Houston. The oil was not optional. It was the covenant between the heat and the hair. Without it, the comb burned. With it, the comb transformed. Number 10. The church hat was not vanity. Black church ladies wore hats to service every single Sunday. It was not decoration. It was theology, tradition, and hair protection in one gesture. 1 Corinthians chapter 11. A passage where Paul writes that a woman's head ought to be covered in worship. Those verses were interpreted and stitched into the culture like thread into felt. A church hat from the millinery counter could cost $2 to $15 depending on the Sunday. Wide brims for summer kept the sun off the press. Close-fitting cloches for winter held warmth against pin curls. The hat pin was pushed through the crown and into the hair beneath, an anchor that held everything in place through 2 hours of preaching and the walk to the car afterward. The hat went on last, after gloves, after earrings. And it came off first. That hat said two things at once. I honor my God, and I protect my work. 5 items in, notice what every one of them has in common. Time. These rituals did not permit rushing. And in a life that demanded everything from a black woman, the kitchen chair on a Saturday night might have been the only hour she was allowed to simply sit and be tended, or to tend. The hair ritual was rest wearing a disguise. Nobody dared interrupt it. Number 9. Sulfur-8. Before bed. Sulfur-8 medicated hair and scalp conditioner was applied to the scalp at night. It promoted growth, treated dryness, and soothed itching. It was not pleasant. It was effective. The yellow jar with the red lid. The smell was unmistakable, sulfur and menthol. A small amount pressed onto the scalp in the same part lines the grease followed. Then a satin scarf tied over everything. Church mothers swore by it. If your edges were thin, if your scalp was dry from pressing. Sulfur-8. It was not a beauty product. It was medicine. The beauty supply store now sells rosemary oil and biotin serums for the same purpose. At $40 a bottle. Sulfur-8 did it in 1958 for 50 cents. Nobody needed to rediscover it. They just needed to remember. Number 8. The satin scarf and bonnet. Before bed, every black woman tied her hair in a satin or silk scarf. No exceptions, no nights off. The press survived or died by what happened between 10 o'clock and 6 in the morning. A square of satin folded into a triangle, tied at the nape or wrapped around the entire head and knotted at the forehead. 20 cents at the 5 and dime. Some women doubled it with a nylon stocking cap over the top. In the morning, one pull of the knot and the hair fell exactly where it had been set. No repressing, no heat, just preservation. That scarf was not about appearance. It was about respect for the labor that went into the style and for the woman who would face the world again in the morning. Number 7. Pin curls for Sunday morning bounce. After pressing, women wound sections of hair around their fingers, coiled them flat against the scalp, and pinned each one in place. By Sunday morning, soft, bouncing curls. Bobby pins from the tin on the dresser. A dime for a box of 50. Hair still warm from the press, wound around the index finger, coiled flat against the head. 2 pins crossed to hold it. 12 to 20 curls depending on the head. The satin scarf tied over all of them. In the morning, the pins were removed one by one, dropped into the porcelain dish on the vanity with a quiet click. The curls unfurled, heavy and soft, brushed once, maybe twice, into a shape that held all day. Through the ride home with the windows cracked. No curling iron, no plug, no instruction manual. Just a woman's hands and 15 minutes of silence before the house went dark. Number 6. Do not sweat out your press. Once the hair was pressed, there was a code of conduct, a set of behavioral rules designed to preserve the style as long as possible. Do not run. Do not get caught in the rain without a scarf. Do not let your neck sweat. During church, a cardboard fan from the funeral home was waved slow and steady near the hairline, not for comfort, but for preservation. Girls who played too hard at the church picnic and came back with their kitchen reverted saw the look on their mother's face, not anger, but disappointment. 1 week of work undone in an afternoon of jump rope. In the summer, some women did not go outside after a fresh press unless it was to the car, and from the car to the air conditioning. The press was not just a style, it was a contract. You honored the work, or you sat back down in that chair. Number 5. The hot comb curling iron. It was a separate tool from the pressing comb. The Marcel iron was heated on the stove. It was used after pressing to create curls, flips, and waves. A pair of round metal barrels clamped together. They were laid in the flame until hot and tested on a paper bag. The hair wrapped around the barrel one section at a time, held for 3 seconds, and then released. A perfect curl dropped. The flip at the ends that every church lady wore in the 60s was achieved with one turn of the wrist and an iron that cost $2 and lasted a lifetime. A row of perfect curls from temple to temple. The finished look that made women ask, "Who does your hair?" The answer was always the same: Mama or Auntie or the lady down the street who did hair in her kitchen for $3 a head. The skill was not purchased. It was inherited. Passed hand to hand across a kitchen table like bread. 15 cents for bergamot, 10 cents for bobby pins, $1.50 for a pressing comb that lasted 2 decades. Today, the average black woman spends upward of $500 a year on hair care. It replaced the mother's hand with a cardboard box. It replaced the kitchen chair with a salon chair that charges by the hour. And it replaced a skill that was free, passed from woman to woman with a service that never stops billing. Number 4. The grease and water method. Between washes, women spritzed their hair with plain water and sealed it immediately with a thin layer of grease. Every single day. That was the entire moisturizing routine. A spray bottle repurposed from a window cleaner, filled with plain tap water. A light mist over the hair in the morning. Then a fingertip of Royal Crown or Blue Magic smoothed over to seal the water in. The grease created a barrier and held the moisture against the strand all day. No leave-in conditioner, no 12-step routine, no $40 spray bottle with a French name. Water and grease. One cost nothing. The other cost a quarter. The natural hair community now calls this the LOC method. Your grandmother did not have an acronym for it. Number 3, sure. Edges laid with a toothbrush and grease. The baby hairs along the hairline were smoothed and sculpted into place using a dedicated toothbrush and a dab of hair grease. A retired toothbrush with soft bristles, worn flat from use, sat on the vanity, never thrown away. It was dipped in a fingerprint of Dax or Murray's pomade from the orange tin, then drawn along the hairline in small, careful strokes. The baby hairs laid flat, forming delicate curves at the temples and forehead. The style was architectural, precise. It was not edge-control gel that cost $12 a tube. A toothbrush, a penny's worth of pomade, and a woman who understood that the frame matters as much as the picture. Those edges were not decoration. They were the signature. Every church mother who walked through those double doors on Sunday had edges that looked like calligraphy. Number 2. Cornrows as the invisible foundation. Underneath wigs, beneath press and curls, and during the week between Sundays, the hair was braided into cornrows. It was the protective style that made everything else possible. Hair was parted with a rat-tail comb into straight rows. 3-strand braids were worked tight from the hairline back, the slight tug at the root that meant it was done right. Braided wet after washing, braided dry on a Wednesday night when the press had faded. Braided before bed under the wig for ladies who had moved past pressing. The cornrow was never seen in public. It was the garment beneath the garment. A girl braided her own hair by 12. She braided her sister's by 10. She learned the tension from her mother's hands. No one photographed the cornrows. No one praised them. They were the work that made the beauty possible and asked for no credit. Number 1. Mama's hands on a Saturday night, the act itself. A mother doing her daughter's hair in the kitchen on a Saturday night. Not a technique, not a product. The ritual, the transmission. The kitchen chair pulled to the center of the floor. a towel draped over small shoulders, the comb on the stove, the jar of grease on the counter with the lid off, the mother standing behind, parting hair with the end of a rat-tail comb, the daughter between her knees or on the chair below. Turn your head, hold your ear, sit still. Words so familiar, they became music. The warmth of the pressing comb passing close enough to feel on the scalp but never touching the skin. The mother's left hand following behind, smoothing, checking. Is it straight? Is it smooth? Is it right? The whole thing took 2 hours, sometimes 3. And in those hours there was no phone that could not wait, no program that mattered more, no man's need that came before this. 15 rules. Not one of them needed a credit card or a discount code. They needed a pressing comb, a jar of grease, a satin scarf, and the belief that a woman's hands were enough. And somewhere right now, a grandmother is heating a pressing comb on a back burner. A girl is sitting on a phone book on a kitchen chair, neck bent forward, holding her own ear flat. No words, just the soft hiss of hot metal meeting oiled hair. And without a single word spoken, the lesson passes again. Those rules shaped how a woman moved through the world. But the strictest rules were the ones nobody ever said out loud. Number 20. The kitchen beautician. In every black neighborhood there was a woman, not licensed, not certified. She did hair in her kitchen for the women and girls on her block, a chrome pressing comb on the gas stove, a kitchen chair draped with a towel, gospel playing low. She charged 50 cents for children and $1 for grown women. Her tools were a rat-tail comb, a tin of Dixie Peach pomade at 15 cents, and a jar of Royal Crown at $0.25. The smell of bergamot, singed hair, and coffee mixed together. Women on the porch waited their turn, talking low about husbands and bills. She was unlicensed because cosmetology schools were segregated, licensing fees were prohibitive, and the state board made credentialing nearly inaccessible to black women. She was the first hygienist most black girls ever knew, and she never advertised. Her reputation traveled by word of mouth alone, from block to block, because in a community shut out of every professional directory, trust was the only credential that mattered. Number 19. The Saturday night bath. Saturday night was bath night. A galvanized tin wash tub was pulled to the center of the kitchen floor. Water was heated in pots on the stove and poured in batches. Children went first, youngest to oldest, then the women. Ivory soap, 4 cents a bar. A washcloth wrung tight, washed behind the ears, between the toes, the back of the neck, the creases of the elbows. Grandmother stood over you checking. A final rinse of cool water from the pitcher. You stepped out onto newspaper laid on the floor. A grandmother who let a child leave that tub without being inspected had failed at something larger than soap could fix. The bath was also the first lesson in bodily autonomy a black child received long before school. In that tub, a child learned that her body required attention, care, and time. That cleanliness was not something done to her, but something she would learn to do for herself. The standard never lowered. Number 18. The hot comb press. A steel pressing comb laid across the eye of a gas burner. The mother tested heat on a brown paper bag. Golden brown meant ready. Black scorch meant too hot. The comb was drawn through greased hair from root to end. The hiss, the faint blue smoke, the smell that every black woman over 60 recognizes instantly. A daughter held her ear down flat while her mother pressed the edges at the temple. That comb was not vanity. It was preparation. The pressing comb was how a mother armored her daughter before sending her out that door. Every stroke was a silent negotiation between a mother's love and the world's demand that her child show up flawless or face judgment before she even opened her mouth. Number 17. Vaseline as the universal shield. Vaseline applied to the ears, hairline, neck, and forehead before any heat touched the hair. Also used on lips, knees, elbows, and knuckles. The blue cap jar was dabbed along the rim of the ear before pressing, on ashy knees before church, on cracked heels in winter, on a baby's scalp when cradle cap appeared. The jar lived on the dresser, in the bathroom, in the purse. One product. Every problem. 12 cents. No corporation had to explain its uses because every woman in the household already knew 15 applications by the time she was grown. Number 16. Cornstarch as body powder. Argo cornstarch from the pantry used as body powder. Under the arms, between the thighs, under the breasts, the bright yellow box. 10 cents. A powder puff patted lightly on clean skin after bathing. In summer, when humidity meant friction for women walking miles to work in service, the cornstarch kept skin dry and free of rash. The cornstarch was not cosmetic. It was dignity measured in a tablespoon. A woman who arrived at her employer's house with sweat visible on her uniform had already lost a negotiation she never agreed to enter. What strikes anyone studying these practices today is the economy of means. One product served 3 or 4 purposes. One ritual addressed hygiene, presentation, and emotional well-being simultaneously. Nothing was wasted. A jar of Vaseline was burn prevention, moisturizer, shoe polish, and hair sealant. A box of baking soda was toothpaste, deodorant, and cleaning agent. The women who built these systems thought in overlapping circles, not straight lines. Every purchase had to justify itself multiple times over. Number 15. Baking soda and salt tooth powder. Arm & Hammer baking soda mixed with table salt, sometimes a drop of peppermint oil. A small saucer on the bathroom shelf with the mixture pre-made. A damp toothbrush pressed into the powder. The grit of salt against enamel. The faintly alkaline taste that meant clean. Teeth white and smooth without a tube of Colgate in sight. Some women added drops of hydrogen peroxide. 10 cents a bottle. A black woman in 1953 could not afford to have anything about her person invite scrutiny. Her teeth were white. It cost her half a cent each morning. She smiled without hesitation because at her own sink she had already done what a dentist she could not afford and could not visit would have told her to do. Number 14. The weekly scalp greasing. Once a week, a woman or girl sat between her mother's knees while her scalp was parted section by section and greased with pomade. The rat-tail comb made clean white parts. A fingertip's worth of Royal Crown was rubbed along the exposed scalp. The cool feel of grease settling into the skin. The smell of bergamot that clung to pillowcases for days. A dry scalp was an untended scalp. The weekly greasing was proof that someone in your life paid attention to you. That ritual between a mother's knees was as much about touch and presence as it was about moisture, because a child who was held still and tended to weekly learned in her body that she was worth someone's time. Number 13. The apple cider vinegar scalp rinse. After washing, women poured apple cider vinegar and water over the scalp. 23 cents a bottle. 2 tablespoons in 1 cup of warm water. Poured slowly at the kitchen sink, the sharp tang rising in the steam. Not rinsed out. Left to dry. What remained was a scalp that did not itch, did not flake, did not betray a woman in a dark dress on Sunday morning. Dandruff on a black woman's shoulders was not a minor concern. The rinse cost 3 cents per use. A 23-cent investment stood between her and the kind of whispered judgment that could follow a woman out of a room and into someone else's conversation about her. These scalp treatments were not guesses. They were refined over decades. A woman who discovered that vinegar stopped her itching told her sister. Her sister told the woman next door. The woman next door told her daughter. Within a single generation, every woman on a city block knew the ratio. 2 tablespoons to 1 cup, not 3, not 1, 2. And when a daughter moved north during the Great Migration, she carried that ratio in her memory like an address. Number 12. Cocoa butter for the skin. Pure cocoa butter applied daily after bathing. The hard golden stick from the pharmacy, 15 cents, warmed between the palms, rubbed over arms, legs, shoulders. The faint chocolate smell that stayed. In winter, it was non-negotiable. The standard was absolute. No ash. Not on the hands, not on the ankles, not on the face. Ashy was not just dry. Ashy was a child whose mother did not check. A woman caught ashy in public carried not just her own negligence, but an indictment of every woman in her household who should have seen it before she walked out that door. Number 11. Castor oil as the universal treatment. Cold-pressed castor oil was used on the scalp for growth, on eyebrows for thickness, on dry patches, and it was taken internally for digestion. It cost 15 cents at the drugstore. It was heavier than any other oil in the cabinet. It was rubbed into the edges where hair thinned from tight braiding. A tablespoon was forced into a child's mouth on Sunday night. The taste was so particular that grown women shuddered when remembering it 40 years later. It was not pleasant, but it grew hair where hair had been lost. Castor oil did not care whether you liked it. It worked anyway. Generations of women who swore they would never force that spoon on their own children found themselves standing over a sink with the bottle open, repeating the very ritual they once despised because nothing else delivered results like that. There is a reason these oils and treatments focused so heavily on the hairline and edges. Tight braiding, cornrows, and the tension of pressed styles pulled at the temples and the nape over years. Hair loss at the edges was common, visible, and for many women, a source of deep, private shame. An acknowledgement that beauty as the world demanded it came at a physical cost, and an insistence that the cost would be managed, minimized, repaired where possible. Number 10. Lemon juice on elbows, knees, and knuckles. Fresh lemon halves rubbed on elbows, knees, and knuckles to lighten darkened skin at the joints. The rough elbow was pressed into the open fruit and rotated slowly. The slight sting of citric acid, sometimes followed with a paste of lemon juice and sugar rubbed in circles. A manual exfoliation that cost 2 cents. Done 3 times a week. Dark joints on a woman whose hands were always visible, serving food, opening doors for employers, were a detail she could not ignore. A lemon cost a nickel. She spent that nickel not because dark skin shamed her, but because she understood exactly which details the people who controlled her paycheck would notice and catalog without ever saying a word. Nearly every one of these rules involves a woman tending to the parts of her body that other people see first. Hands, neck, hairline, teeth, elbows. These were not women obsessing over vanity. These were women living under surveillance. Their hygiene was not routine, it was armor. Number 9. Witch hazel as daily toner. Dickinson's witch hazel was applied to the face with a cotton ball every morning and night. 20 cents. The cool, astringent tingle meant clean. The cotton would come away faintly brown even after washing. Proof that soap alone was never enough. Pores that stayed small, skin that rarely broke out. That bottle of witch hazel on the bathroom shelf was a medical practice built for one patient, by one patient, because the medical establishment had made it clear she was not welcome in its waiting room. Number 8. The Epsom Salt Foot Soak, a chipped enamel basin on the floor by the armchair. A cup of Epsom salt dissolved in water as hot as she could stand. 15 cents a box. Feet lowered in slowly, soaking 20 minutes while mending or listening to the radio. Feet dried carefully afterward between every toe. Vaseline on the heels, cotton socks to bed. A woman who walked 3 miles to work and stood 9 hours did not call this self-care. It was how she made sure she could stand again on Wednesday. Her feet were the machinery that kept the household solvent, and she maintained them with the same seriousness a man would give an engine that had to start every morning without fail. Number 7. The silk scarf, every single night. Before bed, without exception, a black woman wrapped her hair in a silk or satin scarf. A square of silk from the notions counter, 15 cents, folded into a triangle, tied at the nape or knotted at the forehead. Children would squirm while their mother tied it tight enough to stay. A pressed hairstyle cost an hour's work or $1. The scarf protected that investment for 5 or 6 days. To sleep without it was to waste labor. No woman in that generation wasted another woman's labor. A girl who removed her scarf in the night and woke with crushed hair learned quickly that the consequence was not punishment from her mother, but the loss of something that could not be easily replaced before Monday morning. Number 6. Cod liver oil every morning. Scott's emulsion in the glass bottle, the label with the man carrying the fish. 30 cents. The spoon held out at breakfast, children gagging, mothers unsympathetic. Followed immediately by orange juice. Done every morning, September through April. No argument. There was no pediatrician on call, no insurance card. The cod liver oil was prevention against a system that would not catch you if you fell. Every spoonful was a mother betting against illness in a household where one sick week could unravel 3 months of carefully managed survival. She tended to what she could not see, the bones, the blood, the gut. But what about what the world could smell? This is where the rules became most precise, most deliberate, most unforgiving. Number 5. The smell good protocol. A specific layering order. Layer 1, the bath. Ivory soap or cashmere bouquet, 8 cents. Layer 2, cornstarch on dry skin. Layer 3, cocoa butter on arms and legs. Layer 4, a dab of perfume at the pulse points. Evening in Paris in the cobalt blue bottle, 25 cents at Woolworth's. Wrists, behind the ears, base of the throat. Layer 5, a clean perfumed handkerchief in the purse. A black woman in a white employer's house could not smell like anything but clean. Not food, not sweat, not too much perfume. The margin was narrow, and the consequences were employment itself. She calibrated her scent the way a chemist measures a compound, because too much was as dangerous as too little in a world that had already decided what she was supposed to smell like. Number 4. The brown paper bag temperature test, a square torn from a grocery bag. The hot comb lifted from the burner and pressed to the paper. Golden brown meant ready. Black scorch meant wait. No mark meant not hot enough. It was tested before every pass. Children were taught to watch the paper, not their mother's face, for the answer. A burn on a child's ear lasted a week. A burn on a woman's neck was visible at work. The paper bag was love expressed as temperature control. That torn square of brown paper was the only thermometer in the house, and it never failed because a mother's attention never wavered when her daughter's skin was at stake. Number 3. Glycerin and rose water. Equal parts mixed in a clean jar on the dresser. Glycerin at 15 cents. Rose water at 20. applied to the face and hands after washing dishes. The faint smell of roses that lasted an hour. Skin that stayed soft through January. Today, glycerin and rosewater serums sell for $28 an ounce. The formula has not changed. The price has. The only difference between that jar on her dresser and the one in a department store window is a label, a marketing team, and 60 years of someone pretending they discovered what she already knew. Number 2. The inspection before leaving the house. No child left the house without a full inspection. The grandmother's hand turning a face left, then right, checking behind the ears, checking the fingernails, sniffing. Literally leaning in and sniffing. A spot on a dress meant you changed. You did not leave that house until you passed. The inspection was not cruelty. It was preparation for a world that would inspect this child far more harshly and with far less love. Every grandmother who turned that child's face in the morning light was rehearsing for a teacher, an employer, a stranger on the bus who would look at this girl and decide in 3 seconds whether she deserved respect. Number 1. Twice as clean. The rule had no official name, but every black woman knew it. You had to be twice as clean, twice as pressed, twice as put together as anyone around you, because the world was looking for a reason, and you would not give it one. The starch in the collar so stiff it left a line, the shoes polished the night before, the fingernails scrubbed with a brush every morning, the breath checked before speaking to anyone in authority. Not one wrinkle, not one stain, not one strand escaping the press. Daily, relentless, exhausting, completely invisible to anyone who did not live inside it. This was not a beauty standard. This was survival. She armored her body in cleanliness, because cleanliness was the one thing they could not take from her without proving her right about everything. The rule required no explanation, because every black woman who ever walked into a room where she was not wanted already understood that her body was the first argument she made, and it had to be unanswerable. These women were not behind. They were ungovernable. And somewhere tonight, a grandmother is tying a silk scarf over a little girl's freshly pressed hair. The knot goes tight. No words. The lesson passes anyway. Those standards kept the body in order. But the hardest discipline had nothing to do with the body, and everything to do with what she could put on the table when the money was low and the chairs were full. Number 20. The one chicken that fed 12. She bought one whole fryer and got 3 full meals from it. Nothing was left at the end but a clean wishbone drying on the windowsill. One fryer at 39 cents a pound from the A&P in 1961. First night, she fried the pieces in Crisco, in the cast iron. Legs, thighs, wings, the back broken into 2 sections with her hands. The second meal was the breast meat pulled and mixed with celery and Duke's mayonnaise for chicken salad. The third meal was the carcass dropped into a pot of water with salt, pepper, and a bay leaf. She boiled it for 4 hours. That became the stock for dumplings or rice soup. The neck and gizzards went into the gravy or were handed to the children as snacks while she worked. 1 chicken, 12 people, 3 days. She did not call it meal planning. She called it Tuesday. Number 19. The bacon grease can by the stove. Every drop of rendered fat was saved in a tin can on the back of the stove. It was her primary cooking oil. It cost her nothing. Often it was a Maxwell House coffee can or an old Crisco tin. Every morning, the bacon grease was poured through a small strainer to catch the bits. It was used for frying eggs, seasoning greens, greasing the cornbread skillet, and starting the gravy. 1 pound of bacon at 49 cents rendered enough cooking fat for 2 weeks. The can sat near the back burner, always warm, always liquid. She never once bought a bottle of cooking oil in her life. The idea of pouring fat down the drain would have made her sit down. Number 18. Hot water cornbread. Cornmeal, boiling water, a pinch of salt, a pinch of sugar, shaped by hand and fried in a skillet. No oven, no eggs, no milk, no recipe. Quaker yellow cornmeal cost 10 cents a pound. Boiling water was poured in until it held together when squeezed in the palm. Shaped into oval patties with wet hands. Fried until the edges turned copper brown and the center stayed soft. The total cost to feed 8 people was 3 cents worth of cornmeal and a spoonful from the can. No recipe card, no measuring cup. She knew it was right by how it felt in her palm. Number 17. The big pot of beans. A 1-pound bag of dried beans soaked overnight and cooked all day with a ham hock fed 10 people for 2 days straight. Great Northern, Pinto, and Navy beans. 15 cents a pound, soaked overnight and swelling to twice their size by morning. 1 smoked ham hock at 10 cents. Seasoned with salt, black pepper, a bay leaf, and a dried red pepper. Cooked low and slow until the broth turned thick and creamy on its own. Served over rice or with cornbread to soak the pot liquor, a full meal for less than a quarter. Number 16. The flour gravy stretch. 2 tablespoons of drippings, 2 tablespoons of flour, and a cup of milk or water. That gravy turned a 1/4 pound of meat into dinner for 10. Pan drippings from whatever was fried that night. Gold medal flour was whisked in until it turned the color of peanut butter for brown gravy, or left pale for sawmill gravy. Pet evaporated milk was added slowly while she stirred. Poured over rice, over biscuits, over cornbread, over the meat itself. A single pork chop, sliced thin and buried under gravy, fed 3 children who never knew there was not enough meat. The gravy was the trick. It multiplied what was already there. The children never knew they were poor. The gravy never told them. Number 15. Rice under everything. White rice was the foundation of nearly every meal. Whatever sat on top, the rice made it enough. Riceland or Mahatma long grain rice cost 10 cents a pound. A 25-pound sack lasted a family of 8 nearly a month. Cook it as 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice, 1 tablespoon of bacon grease, and a pinch of salt, served under red beans on Monday, under smothered chicken on Wednesday, and under neck bone gravy on Saturday. A second helping of rice was always free. A second helping of meat was not. 6 tricks in. Not one of them required a specialty store or a grocery delivery. They worked with a chicken, a bag of beans, cornmeal, flour, rice, and the fat already in the pan. They did not need a meal kit delivered to the porch. They had a mother who taught them to see 3 meals where everyone else saw 1. Today, the average American family spends over $900 a month on groceries. Number 14. Jack mackerel croquettes. A can of jack mackerel, crushed saltine crackers, and 1 egg shaped into patties and fried. Protein for 6 people from a 12-cent can. Jack mackerel cost 12 to 15 cents a can in 1960. It was opened and dumped into a bowl, the bones mashed with a fork. The calcium was in the bones, and she knew that without being told. It was mixed with crushed saltine crackers, 1 beaten egg, black pepper, and a little minced onion. Shaped into flat patties, dredged in cornmeal, and fried in the iron skillet until golden on both sides. Served over white rice with hot sauce on the side. Number 13. The commodity box transfund. USD. A surplus food arrived in plain cardboard, items like commodity cheese, powdered milk, canned meat, butter, and cornmeal. There were no recipes included. She turned those plain packages into meals people wanted to eat. 5 pounds of American commodity cheese came as one solid orange block. Powdered milk came in unmarked bags. Canned pork and canned beef arrived in plain silver tins with black stencil letters. The cheese melted into a roux of flour and butter and became macaroni and cheese that no Kraft box ever matched. She made the canned meat into hash with potatoes and onion. She made the powdered milk into banana pudding. She turned every nameless tin into something a family sat down for. Number 12. Pot liquor. The broth left after cooking greens was never poured down the drain. It was served in a cup, sopped with cornbread, or saved for tomorrow's soup. Collard greens or turnip greens simmered for hours with a ham hock or a smoked turkey neck. The liquid turned dark green, rich with iron and vitamins and pork fat. Poured into a coffee cup and served alongside the plate. Children drank it like broth. Some women saved it in a mason jar in the icebox and used it the next day to cook rice or start a new pot of soup. A bunch of collards cost 10 cents. The pot liquor cost nothing at all. Number 11. Bread pudding from stale bread. Day-old bread soaked in eggs, canned milk, sugar, and vanilla. Baked until golden. What should have been trash became the best thing on the table. Stale white bread from Colonial or Sunbeam. Heels and end pieces saved all week in a paper bag on top of the icebox. Torn into chunks in a baking dish, soaked in beaten eggs, pet evaporated milk, sugar, imitation vanilla, and a grating of nutmeg. Baked until set and golden on top. A simple sauce of butter, sugar, and a little canned milk poured warm over each serving. Total cost for a pan that fed 12 people was under 20 cents. She never called it frugal. She called it bread pudding. And every grandchild in that family has spent 30 years trying to make it taste the way hers did. Number 10. Neck bones all day on the back burner. Pork neck bones were the cheapest cut at the butcher counter. She braised them for hours until the meat fell apart in silky threads and the gravy turned thick as velvet. Pork neck bones cost 10 to 15 cents a pound. The butcher sometimes gave them away for free. She seasoned them with salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and a shake of Lawry's seasoned salt. She browned them first in a skillet until dark on every side. Then she placed them in a heavy pot with just enough water to cover them. She cooked them on the back burner, on the lowest possible flame, for 4 to 5 hours. The cartilage melted. She served the meat over white rice, with the pot gravy ladled heavy on top. They cost a dime and tasted like something you would wait an hour in line for. Every one of these tricks has one ingredient in common, and it is not in the pantry. It is time. The beans cooked all day. The neck bones took 5 hours. The grease collected over weeks. These women gave the one thing they had the least of. They were raising children who were not always their own. They were cleaning other people's houses 6 days a week. And they came home and stood at that stove anyway. Number 9. Sweet potatoes from the yard. One sweet potato plant in the backyard produced enough for 6 different dishes. She grew them herself and never bought them once. Sweet potato slips were planted in spring and harvested by October. One hill produced 5 to 8 potatoes. They were baked whole, then split open and served with butter. They were mashed with canned milk and brown sugar. They were candied in a skillet with butter and sugar until glazed. They became sweet potato pie for Sunday. They turned into sweet potato bread. They were fried into chips for the children after school. No grocery cost, only labor and red clay soil. One hill, 6 dishes. She fed her family dessert from the dirt behind the house and never once thought that was remarkable. Number 8. Oxtails at 15 cents a pound. Oxtails were the butcher's last resort. cheap, bony, ignored by everyone who could afford better. She braised them into something restaurants now charge $35 a plate for. Oxtails at 12 to 15 cents a pound in the 1950s and 60s. Today, they run $10 to $15 a pound. She seasoned them heavy, browned them in the skillet until dark on every flat surface, braised with onions, garlic, carrots, a bay leaf, a splash of Worcestershire. 4 to 5 hours on a low flame until the collagen dissolved and the meat slid clean off the bone. The gravy turned nearly gelatinous. Served over white rice, the bones picked clean by the time every plate was empty. The food nobody wanted became the food everybody remembers. Number 7. The backyard garden. Collards, tomatoes, green beans, okra, peppers, onions. She did not buy vegetables from a store. She grew them 3 feet from the kitchen door. A plot no bigger than a bedroom. Red clay turned with a shovel in March. Collard greens that grew waist-high and were picked leaf by leaf through the winter. Tomatoes staked with old broomsticks. Okra cut at dawn before the pods got tough. String beans snapped on the porch in a paper sack. Canning in mason jars every August. Shelves in the basement lined tight like a private grocery store that never closed. Her grocery bill for vegetables was $0. She never once called it organic or sustainable or farm to table. She called it the garden. Number 6. Chitlins cleaned for 6 hours. Chitlins. Chitterlings, hog intestines, they required hours of cleaning before they could be cooked. Other people discarded them, and she turned them into Christmas dinner. A 10-pound bucket of chitlins from the butcher, $1 to $2 in the 1960s. Cleaned under cold running water, turned inside out, every speck of membrane scraped away by hand. Some women cleaned them 5, 6, 7 times, until the water ran perfectly clear. Boiled with onion, vinegar, bay leaves, and red pepper flakes. Served with hot sauce and white bread or alongside hog maw and collard greens. 6 hours of cleaning. That was the price of admission. She paid it every December without wondering if it was worth it. It was tradition. It was hers. Number 5. Sugar syrup desserts from almost nothing. Caramel cake from burned sugar. Tea cakes from lard and flour. Syrup sandwiches when there was nothing else left. Sweetness conjured from what other kitchens would call bare. Tea cakes made from flour, sugar, lard, or Crisco, eggs, and vanilla. Rolled flat and cut with a jelly jar lid. Baked pale and soft. Caramel cake iced with nothing but white sugar burned in a dry skillet until it turned amber, then milk added and stirred fast until smooth. Syrup sandwiches made with light bread and alaga, or Brer Rabbit cane syrup. Peach cobbler from canned peaches topped with a simple biscuit dough dropped by the spoonful. She burned sugar in a dry skillet and turned it into something no bakery in that city could match. That was not poverty. That was mastery. 20 people at a table is not just a head count. It is a statement. It means nobody in this family eats alone. These women did not cook for 20 because it was easy. They cooked for 20 because they decided the table was the one place where nobody would feel like they did not have enough. The food was the sermon. The table was the altar. Number 4. Cooking on Sunday for the whole week. Sunday was production day. After church, she cooked 4 or 5 dishes in bulk and portioned them out for every supper until the following Saturday. Sunday morning, after service, still in her good dress with an apron tied over the front, a roast or a hen in the oven, a pot of greens on the stove, rice in the biggest pot she owned. Cornbread made twice because one pan was never enough. Monday supper was leftover chicken with rice and gravy. Tuesday was the beans that started simmering Sunday night. Wednesday was the roast, sliced thin and reheated in its own juice. She worked 6 days a week in somebody else's house. On Sunday, she worked in her own. By sundown, her family was fed for 7 days. Number 3. Cornbread every single day. Cornbread was not a side dish, it was the daily bread. Made fresh every day in the same iron skillet, it turned any pot of beans or greens into a full meal. Self-rising cornmeal from Martha White, 10 cents a pound, mixed with buttermilk if she had it, an egg if she had one, a spoonful of bacon grease stirred in, poured into the cast iron skillet already smoking hot with grease, baked until the top was golden and the bottom crust turned dark and crisp from the iron. That skillet was never washed with soap, wiped clean with a rag. The next day's cornbread built on 40 years of seasoning beneath it. The cornbread was constant. The stove could be empty, the ice box nearly bare, but if there was meal in the tin and grease in the can, she could put something on that table. And she did, every single day. Number 2. The Church Plate Network. Women in the church cooked extra and sent plates to those who needed them. Nobody called it charity. A plate went out, a plate came back. That is how 20 families fed each other without a single one of them feeling less than. Aluminum foil pressed tight over a ceramic plate. A child sent walking 2 blocks with a plate still warm. A piece of chicken, rice, greens, a square of cornbread. Sister Johnson lost her husband, and a plate appeared on her porch every evening for 3 weeks. Nobody knocked. Nobody waited to be thanked. You saw the need. You filled the plate. That was all. The plate was never a handout. It was a conversation between women who understood that sometimes you give the plate and sometimes you receive it. That system fed more families than any program with a government seal ever did. Number 1. The hands that never measured. She never wrote a recipe down. She cooked by feel. A palmful of flour, a pour that lasted 2 seconds, a pinch that was never the same twice, and it always tasted right. How much salt, Grandma? Enough. The palm that cupped flour and already knew the weight of a half cup. The pour of buttermilk that stopped when the batter looked right, not when a line on a measuring cup said so. You just have to watch me do it. Then do it yourself. Then it is yours. 20 tricks. Not one of them needed a grocery delivery app, a food processor, or a recipe subscription box. They needed a pot, a flame, a garden, and the belief that a woman could feed her whole family on what other people threw away. And somewhere right now, a grandmother is standing at a stove, salting a pot without measuring, and a girl beside her is watching, not writing anything down, just watching. The lesson never needed words. It only needed the girl to stay. Here is the pattern. Every practice in this video, from the pre-dawn ritual to the last plate of food, shares one quality that no modern product can replicate. They cost nothing and were built on understanding the body rather than buying something to fix it. What vanished was not a set of habits, but the confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you are doing. They did not bury these rules because they stopped working. They buried them because they worked too well and cost nothing. A woman who already knows what to do from sunrise to bedtime cannot be sold a single thing she does not need. That was the problem. Knowledge was the product.